All right. Hello, hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 43 of the Hideout. Feels like we've been doing these forever, and it's starting, I guess it's just past a year. So, really, really awesome. Thank you to everyone who has joined for another one of our weekly editions. We're going to be talking about Metaverse gaming and all things Web3. So, we've got an awesome panel today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Nick Frontera. I am one of the founders and the CEO of Apollo Entertainment, the company behind Satoshiverse and the Satoshi's Legions game. So we've been building the Satoshiverse for the last 3 years. It started as a comic collaboration between ourselves and Jose Delbo, who's a very well-known comic and crypto artist who got us kicked off and into creating the world that we've been creating now for the last 3 years. Last 2 years, we've been creating our Satoshi's Legions game, which is a high-fidelity action RPG roguelike hybrid. So if you want to kind of decongest what all that means and check out what we're building, check out the pinned tweet at the top. I won't go too deep into it because we've got a lot of awesome panelists today who are going to be telling us about themselves. I think we have, let me make sure we've got everybody on stage. It's looking like we do. So I will get us started. If you could just, so I'll call on everybody, and if you could just give us a quick introduction of yourself, what you're building, and then we'll turn to Spencer, and then we'll get started with the questions for everybody and some individual questions. So why don't we start with Andrea or Andrea? Can you give us an introduction?
Yeah, hi, my name is Andrea Berry. I'm head of business development at Theta Labs. We're a proof of stake layer one blockchain company that focuses on media and entertainment with a strong video background. Yeah, I'll leave it there, but I'm excited to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Very happy to have you as well. Looking forward to talking more. How about we turn now to Forest Knight? Could you talk to us a little bit about what you guys are building?
Yeah, sure thing. Hey, everybody. My name is Befa. I'm founder and CEO of Forest Knight. We are a Web3 gaming company. Specifically said, we are a Web3 NFT project, a turn-based strategy game for mobile. We're currently right now on Android early access and iOS coming soon. We launched the game 2 years ago, building since then. Yeah, I think that's enough for the start. Thank you for having me here.
Amazing. Well, glad to have you on. I know you might have to jump out early, so we'll make sure to cram as much in as we can.
Appreciate it.
No problem. So why don't we turn to Pog, which is bringing back memories of my youth.
There we go. Yeah, happy to be here. Exactly, the Pog brand from the 90s. We sold about 10 billion collectibles with partners including Disney and Power Rangers, Pokemon, NFL, and so forth. And a lot of millennials and Gen X grew up with this. It's phenomenal collectible, and bringing that interoperable gaming here in the Web3 ecosystem. Very, very excited to be here. Thanks to Theta and everybody. Rob Feldman is the reason that we found kind of this rabbit hole. So we're excited to be here on stage with him as well, and all of you.
I love it, and no, super excited to hear about what you guys are building. And since you mentioned Rob, why don't we jump over to Rob? Rob, good to have you here.
Hey, nice to be here. Thanks so much. And Kyler, thanks so much again for the shout out, dude. You're too kind. You're too kind. Yeah, my name is Rob Feldman. I'm a comic book artist, animation producer. I'm currently producing an animated pilot with the cast of Napoleon Dynamite for my original property called Psycho KO. I'm also a Theta partner, proud Theta partner, having known Andrea for a couple of years now, right? Through my NFTs, I've been very successful and very happy to be a part of the Theta community. I'm also CTO of Rocket Ship Entertainment, which is a graphic novel publisher, and we work with the likes of Legendary Comics and Power Entertainment and a bunch of others. So, and here I am.
Amazing. Well, we love having artists on here. That's kind of how we all got our roots into all this. So really, really excited to get into comic art specifically and talk a little bit about how you've been seeing the space and all the opportunities in it. But before we do jump
For
into
sure.
the questions, Spencer, why don't you give us a quick introduction and then you can take it away for us.
Sure thing. Yeah, my name is Spencer Vogel. I've been involved with Web3 and NFT since 2017, 2018, and I've been working with Satoshiverse and Apollo for the last couple of years on the business development and strategy side of things. And I ask the questions on these spaces. So we're gonna start off with a question for everyone, and then I'll call on someone to start, and then feel free to just jump in and make it conversational, and then we'll get into some individual questions as well.
Spencer, sorry to just interrupt. Before we get started, I just see that Ivory Jones, founder of Fuse Wars, is here. It would be great to bring him up on stage as well. I'd love for him to talk about his project.
Sure thing. Yeah, Nick, maybe
cool.
You could do that while I finish up just the intro here.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
And then we'll get into some more questions for everyone at the end there. And then for those that are listening live, we're going to be doing a giveaway at the end of the stream here. So make sure you stick around for the end for a chance to win that prize. And then Fuse Wars. Could you maybe give us a quick intro before we get into the first question here?
Yes, absolutely. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Okay, awesome. My name's Ivory Jones. I'm the CEO, founder of Fuse Wars. It's a third-person arena action shooter on the Theta blockchain. Excited to be here, and can't wait to share more about everything Theta and everything Web3.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it. And then, so I think let's, Bafar, with Forest Knight, maybe I'll have you start out on the first question just because you have to leave pretty soon. So the first question is, what do you believe are the key elements, excuse me, I was actually reading your individual question there. So the first question is, how do you see NFTs and Web3 technologies impacting traditional industries like art, music, and gaming in the next decade?
Yes, I mean that's definitely a very broad question. I do believe that's gonna be. I mean, we are building a game right now, and I think in gaming we can see it already. For example, very good observation is what, for example, the free-to-play model did to the AAA model, right? Mobile gaming came in, free-to-play model showed itself as a superior. Now we see a lot of AAA companies really adapt this model. For example, Blizzard with their new Diablo game, etc., etc. And I do believe that Web3 game within the next few years gonna do the same to the traditional models, just because it makes a lot of sense from the economic perspective, and especially on the mobile side, we see a problem with the UA. The UA is pretty much broken. If you can see, it's very very hard to get users, buy users, and also with the new restriction from the app stores, it is really very competitive market on the user acquisition channels. And as you can, for example, see looking at the app stores right now, you can see very clearly that the top games there are still the top games maybe 5 years ago, like Candy Crushes, Clash Royale, etc. Just because the competitiveness of the user acquisition channel. And the idea of Web3 games to bring a new sort of value to the users, but also it brings a sort of new revenue model for the players, for the game developers, can kind of really revolutionize the how the user acquisition is happening. And how user acquisition happens is basically how we creating games right now. So I do believe that Web3, especially the digital ownership, the transparency, and digital economy is going to be a perfect fit for gaming because it's already was there in a different form. The fashion and music, I'm pretty sure there are better experts here, but I do believe that at the end, it's all about experience and how brands create experiences for their users. And as we go more and more into a world that digital and the physical kind of blend together, the new generation are more and more into digital stuff. And I think it's very fair to say that the world we know right now is the digital world is also part of the real world we are experiencing. We spend a lot of time in games, in digital experiences, in our phone, in apps. So I think it's very natural that through Web3 and through the tokenization of these digital experiences, brands like fashion brands, music brands are going to utilize that to get more near to their users and also be able to provide experiences for them that are already used to, especially the new generation that are growing up with these digital experiences.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree, and not to kind of parrot everything that was just said. My background prior to this was as a lawyer in the entertainment and intellectual property industries, and for me, what really interested me in NFTs and Web3 generally, in kind of the early days when I got involved in the space back now probably 6 years ago, was that NFTs are obviously a technology, right? They create an infrastructure for a true ownership model. And I think, ownership and true digital ownership, that those words get thrown around a lot. But in kind of the spectrum of digital assets, there hasn't ever been a real infrastructure for property rights beyond intellectual property rights, right? For the longest time, if something was digital, you had the right to use it, you had the right to display it, but those were always revocable, limited licenses that were passed on by a developer to the end consumer, right? So this is the first time we really have seen the potential for an infrastructure for a certain amount of tangibilization of digital assets. And so, I've said that before, and I think for me, it's a very important concept that one day through NFTs, we can have many of the same legal rights to, let's say, a digital trading card as we would with a physical trading card. And I think that, as the world becomes progressively more and more digital, that's going to be very important because people, when they spend money or time on something, they want to have those ownership rights over those things. And I will say that they don't simply exist as a proxy of something being, an NFT. Just because something's an NFT doesn't actually mean you have property rights or ownership rights over it. That's going to be something that takes time and development in legal systems and infrastructures. But what the technology does is it kind of creates this relatable infrastructure so that courts and legislatures can look at something and say, hey, why does a digital t-shirt need to be different than a physical t-shirt? Why does a licensing deal for a logo on a digital t-shirt need to be different than a physical t-shirt? And I think NFTs for the first time provide a way of relating physical assets to digital assets and adopting a system that already exists, which is what governments and lawmakers love to do. So I think that it's going to be crucial from an infrastructure standpoint. I think that the ways that different industries use NFTs are just, we're just scratching the surface. We saw what it did the last couple of years for digital artists who prior didn't really have a great way of selling the art itself and acquiring consumer bases and fans and collectors, and changed, tons of people's lives in that respect. But I think also, for me, what we were just hearing about in the privacy sense, that user acquisition can, in kind of the face of all these privacy laws that really keep us from sharing and aggregating information, or on the other hand, make a huge business out of it, right? I think that what NFTs could do is offer a more private way of getting really important user information to better engage with people based on their interests without revealing all their crucial kind of KYC data, and could kind of change the way we look at user acquisition in the future. So I'm super, super excited for the effect it might have.
I agree. I'll just chime in. I agree with everything you have said. And one of the first things. I joined this space a year and a half ago, and as I started to learn about blockchain before taking the job and just understanding the technology to, is this really the step I want to take? My whole background's in video streaming, and what I realized, my first aha moment was NFTs, but really, Web3 as a whole, blockchain technology as a whole, is it's infrastructure for community. And what I learned in my video streaming background is that the communities drive all of these businesses, right? It's the consumers that come together that are strength in numbers, and so that to me is really exciting that NFTs represent that. I spend a lot of time in my day-to-day work just like educating a lot of these executives that NFTs aren't just art, or it doesn't necessarily have to be ownership or collectibles. If you wanted to use them for a more intimate relationship with your consumers, that's easy to do with this. And I love that part of NFTs is that it's a more intimate, direct relationship between the creator, the brand, the company, and the consumer, and it's mutually beneficial in so many ways.
Fuse Wars, you have your hand up?
Yes, I just wanted to elaborate specifically for gaming. NFTs right now and in the past have been a part of gaming. They're not a part of the development of gaming. And that's going to change very soon. I know with me and my team, it has already changed where NFTs need to be a part of the development of gaming. Because if it's a part of the development, then it now becomes more of an interaction where metadata is being interacted with video games and the players can experience that. And everything has to do with experience here. When I was growing up, I'm watching Michael Jordan on TV, and I get to enjoy that experience from afar. But the closest I could get to that was buying his tennis shoes. And that experience went far and wide where everybody purchased MJs. And that's going to happen again with NFTs. NFTs will be a part of the infrastructure of Web3 gaming, but it has to start with the developers. It has to start with game developers developing their game based off of NFTs and not just being a separate entity apart from the game. And I think that's really important. If metadata can interact with game engines, which they can, and you can have your gamer interact with their character, play their game, have an experience, and then that experience transforms into the blockchain, I think that's 100% going to be a golden ticket for NFTs in the future. May not need to be using the word NFTs, I don't know, but the technology is here to be an amazing journey for games.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, coming from our perspective, also developing a game that incorporates NFTs kind of from the beginning, we've seen in the traditional gaming industry that when you try to layer on an open player economy onto an existing infrastructure that was, not made and designed to be open, that often doesn't work. We saw it with Diablo 3, and that was even, they had Real Money Auction House. They were thinking about that from the very beginning, and it still didn't work. I think we have to fundamentally, especially if you're talking about anything other than just aesthetics, right? If you're thinking about any kind of RPG or anything where progress and different aspects of the game depend on the items that you own, you're going to open up the economy for those items through NFTs. That has to be like core to your game design. That can't be something that's kind of just part of it, and otherwise the game doesn't work, it breaks, right? So I think probably I'd say 50% of our game design discussions in the early days revolved around how do we create new systems that an open player economy wouldn't break? How do we change this to pay for progress rather than pay for win? How do we adopt strategies that have been used successfully in RPGs, but then also look at some of the kind of free-to-play models that do, incentivize users to pay to progress and kind of create a hybrid of the two to create something sustainable that, doesn't break as soon as people can purchase items, through the game. And that's taken, a lot of thought. And I think that there are going to be, I think, some failed experiments of bigger studios that just decide, okay, we're gonna make NFTs in a game that already exists, because I think that's harder to do. But I do think we're kind of hitting that point right now where we're at the 2 to 3 year point from where, NFTs and gaming really started to blossom as an idea. And so we're starting to see the alphas of games that are natively, Web3 enabled and have these open player economies, starting to release in the last 6 months. We've seen it, and I think we're going to continue to see it next year. I think we're going to see a lot of really cool titles. I'm familiar with a few of them, but I think we're going to see hundreds of pretty good gaming experiences that are natively Web3. So that's something I'm definitely excited about.
Rob or Pog? I'm sorry, I didn't get the name of who was on the Pog account. Do either of you guys have anything to add to this before we jump on individual questions?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think brand is the only thing that differentiates most products over time. Innovation can be duplicated if given enough time. So when Apple creates something innovative, if they've not patented it, something, can be duplicated from that very quickly. So the blockchain actually allows for, right, the verification on a public ledger. And I think that fundamentally is something that POG didn't have back in the day. And so I can give a pretty good example of how Web3 technology is enabling our approach. My background, really quickly, I got to help build out a number of bigger companies from Google to Unity, got to lead blockchain gaming, blockchain strategy at Unity in 2017, and most recently helped deploy electric trucks at Rivian. I'm very, very passionate about blockchain. I've been around Bitcoin since 2012, 2013, mining back in the day on Butterfly Lab, mining rigs and so forth. And so to be back in this industry and to really be pushing something I've been passionate about for a long time is a great pleasure and a great honor. So the distributed ledger, which is blockchain technology, is fundamentally going to reduce infrastructure costs for companies. And when the customer now owns their information, they can put it in a wallet, they can do whatever they need to build some kind of profile or entity on the blockchain, and then give access to platforms that they want to interact with. So you can think that maybe eBay or Amazon or Netflix or PayPal, whoever's enabling these functionalities from the blockchain into their platform, will reduce the amount of overhead they have to spend on databases, on premises, or cloud functionality. The fact that we can distribute kind of the costs of running and maintaining a ledger across the entire globe to people who want to be a part of that is extremely exciting. And the way that the blockchain works by hashing and putting together these transactions, ensuring that there's a traceable and verifiable ledger is the thing that creates that security. So, the reason that POG is so perfect for this entity or for this ecosystem is we're kind of going the opposite way. We're not necessarily building a game showing you how you can own the assets. Our goal is to work with any developers who may be millennials or Gen X and remember the POG brand. Let's make POGs together. Take some of our POGs, put them in your game. Let's do something to really, bring a lot of users who, when we look at the problems of blockchain gaming, sorry, I'll wrap up really quick, but when we look at the problems of blockchain gaming, we can see that in most instances, the players are the only ones who care about owning those collectibles or those assets. And so POG is something that's beautiful that has gone across many different brands from Barbie to Disney and wherever. And if you find something in a game, chances are there is a buyer out there who's never heard of that game but would love to own that collectible. And that is where that interoperable functionality and value comes from. And then the last thing with POG is when we were in the 90s, I'm 36 years old. I played POGs back then. It was pretty quick how the fad or how the demand for this product went out the door because sky caps and tops and slam caps and all of these other brands were very quick to duplicate, right? And they didn't have a blockchain to substantiate this. They would have to rely on paper certificates of authenticity for collectibles, and now you can simply have a QR code or an NFC chip go and verify that provenance. And so for our physical collectibles, we're very excited to be bringing digital authentication and duplication into gameplay, making each of your single pogs a one of one, and it really does authenticate the uniqueness of each collectible. So that's how we're utilizing it, and that's really where I see a lot of these avenues taking place, the opportunities for this technology.
I love it.
Yeah.
No, that's really, really cool. Rob, I'd love to
Yeah,
hear your perspective on, coming from the traditional art space and how this
sure.
has affected your outlook.
Yeah, I was just sort of waiting my turn because there's a lot of Web3 is closely associated with gaming and not so much comics, which is kind of my background and what I do. And so I find it really interesting that this idea, like what Kyler said, and also what Ivory said, specifically with ownership. I mean, we haven't had a platform yet that establishes ownership for your comics. I mean, we've had Comixology, we have all these webtoon platforms which are really popular, Line Webtoon, Tapas, and the list goes on and on. But there's no true ownership of the comic itself, and that's what obviously Web3 does, and what we're all talking about here. That it establishes, I own this comic, and then I can also sell it on the secondary marketplace if I choose. It gains value because of the smart contract and that establishing that ownership. That's a big thing. That's a huge, huge thing because, like Kyler was saying, with Pogs being the physical piece to it, that's kind of all we have to establish value until now, which is pretty amazing. And so also, and to piggyback what Ivory said about building things specifically, I mean, content in itself, you have to decide how it's going to be built. Is it going to be a movie? Is it going to be a comic? Is it going to be a song? And so on and so forth. But so building things specifically as a Web3 product is kind of key from the get-go, because you can't, you could take a novel and make it a movie, of course, but it's not the same. It's never the same, right? So I'm really excited about the things that are coming. It's just getting there is kind of a obviously slow crawl, but it definitely is a game changer in many ways. I mean, Amazon, look what Amazon did with Comixology. They just sort of cut the cord. What does that do with everybody that had, invested in comics and still wants to buy them? It would be nice if they had some degree of true ownership there.
Yeah, I don't want to take this down a rabbit hole, but just when you start talking comics and NFTs, I know me and Spencer get excited because that's kind of how we jumped into this space. I remember, back in 2020, when we were getting started, there was no comics in the space whatsoever. And I was working with my grandfather, Jose Delbo, and he was a comic artist, for 70 years, and at this point 87 years old. And so the idea of kind of embracing this digital future was a little bit weird and foreign. But he, kind of right when COVID started, he had completed, it had been three years he'd been working on a comic book of his own with a new character that he created called Death. And there weren't really a ton of options for him to publish the physical books and the infrastructure that requires. But this was probably before this. Well, it was before VV and all these comic book platforms on NFTs had popped up. We got the idea of, hey, why not put a comic book on the blockchain? Why not create a digital ownership infrastructure? And so we had the pleasure of launching the first original comic book on the blockchain with Jose. And I think I remember shortly after we did that, I went to, I think it was LA Comic Con, and we did a panel on comics and NFTs. And people had either never heard of it, or the ones that did were very against it. It seemed like a lot of comic artists were rejecting it in the beginning. And
Yeah.
then, we started to see, some success, and you started to see independent comic artists doing okay and bringing their own IPs. And I think the comic world has really embraced it since then, which is awesome to see.
They have, and they haven't. I mean, I still see so much resistance to it. It's really staggering because from a creator standpoint, I'm always looking for avenues. I go way back. I'm an old dude, right? So I go all the way back to 20 years ago, with the dawn of the web and flash animation and stuff. And so, like, you're always looking for avenues, like, what can I do with my property to further exploit it, right? And so Theta was like the first time that I thought, okay, well, I could do a comic and we can gate that using an NFT. And, now I'm 4 comics in, and it's been pretty amazing because I don't think, even though they did well in print, that visibility and that community engagement was everything I was sort of hoping for, and it happened. So yeah, it's kind of big. I don't understand why other comic creators are not jumping to do this.
Yeah, it's really funny, and this is bordering on me taking it down the rabbit hole, so I'll stop here. But I actually got to work with a company called Stanley Entertainment to help them work on a release of a property called Seventh Portal, which was
Oh yeah,
Stan Lee's vision of kind of the
oh yeah,
future
I
of
know that.
comics on the internet. Yeah, and it was super cool. The release never happened because of complications with the IP, but it
Yeah.
it it was insane for me to kind of deep dive in with all these people who were around Stan Lee and just
Hmm.
hear about how he was actively thinking about comics on the internet in the 90s and created an entire property around
Yeah.
that. To me, that was just awesome. And I don't know. I think as the technology becomes better, people are going to be more willing to adopt it, and it's going to be a little less, because you have all the environmental concerns and you have the rug pulls and the
Sure.
bad press. I
Yeah.
understand why people who don't really understand it aren't willing to throw their brand, into something that might get them some pushback. I think that's happened in the gaming industry as well.
Yeah.
But I think at some point it's just going to be back ended enough that it's like, oh, we're releasing an ownable digital version of this comic book, and it
Yeah.
happens to be an NFT.
It'll be appliance-like. Once it becomes appliance-like, where it's a push of a button, that's adoption for sure.
Definitely. Sorry, Spencer. We can move on out of my
No problem. I was
self-created
I was
rabbit hole.
enjoying
Sorry.
listening to you guys, but I'll reel it back in. So the first individual question is for Andrea here. So what role do you think blockchain networks like Theta should play in fostering growth within their own ecosystems, and what types of initiatives do you think have had the biggest impact?
Yeah, it's a big question. Thinking about that, it's less about the blockchain technology and just more business development, I think. But by the nature of Web3 and infrastructure being decentralized, I think about that answer in a few different ways. Like, I think that as a company, it's our job to make sure that people understand the technology, are educated and aware, that we support these projects as they come onto the blockchain and help them integrate blockchain technologies, whatever that may be. Ivory's talking about NFTs from the get-go. We have a video API. There's lots of different ways to use Theta. So I think from like a very practical sense, there's that piece that, we have a job to do and make sure questions are answered, documentation is updated, things like that. And then, I think this is my favorite part of the job is like helping these projects amplify, their product and really match make them within the ecosystem with, as it makes sense with other partners or customers that they'd like to leverage, benefit from. I think, Rob and Kyler, who are up on stage, is like a perfect example. We came together through Kyler coming across Rob's project, Rob introducing him to me, and now it's great because I'm able to help them partner with other folks in the space. I would just say, like, let's see, it's that matchmaking aspect. It's being resourceful. It's allowing for interoperability, rather than typically in a Web2 world or before blockchain technologies. I think competition amongst companies is very brutal and not always putting the creator or the project first. And so what I love about Web3 technology is blockchain allows for interoperability. It allows for the creator and project to do what's best for their business, their project, their community. And so, a company like Theta's responsibility is to be there to support them, to educate them, to foster growth, to market, to advise as necessary or needed, or desired from the project. And then from there, we're a piece of their business. So I don't know, maybe that's a little bit of a fluffy answer, but I think of it, in terms of responsibilities, we're there to advocate, help foster growth, and pave new paths for the industry as a whole.
Yeah, I honestly think I think that hits the nail on the head, at least from our perspective when we're looking at blockchains to partner with, and part of our design is to be multi-chain and to roll out. That's part of our growth strategy, is to work with different blockchain providers. And I think what we look for is exactly that. How do we, because blockchains inherently have lots of problems, right? There's problems with user experience, there's problems with user acquisition, and typically the blockchains themselves can't solve those problems, right, by themselves. There's some blockchains that do better jobs with certain problems than others, but at its core, the tech has to be good for the blockchain, and that's the base layer, right? We need that layer of collaboration between projects and tooling being built for games, and all the different things that I think creates an ecosystem more than just a protocol or a structure. So, I think it's great. And what you said, just connecting the dots within that ecosystem. I think a lot of blockchains, probably less now than before, but also, one of the things right now, especially where you can't just self-fund through an NFT project, it's nice to see blockchains that have grant programs and are, helping smaller developers develop tooling for their platforms. I think that's also been very effective, and it's great to see. So yeah, I totally agree.
I agree.
Yeah, I just wanted to come in from a technical standpoint of the question. Andrea answered it beautifully from a business standpoint. From a technical standpoint, though, I think that the Theta blockchain offers edge nodes and edge storage, and I think that's really important in gaming specifically, because cloud gaming is at its infancy still, and cloud gaming is still going to be very important. A lot of people don't talk about it or realize how important cloud gaming is going to become, because the technology, hardware-wise, is becoming cheaper and getting easier to build these different servers, where people that do not have the ability or don't even think about becoming a PC gamer could access some of these games through cloud gaming. And one of the aspects that Theta can help with that blockchain specifically, is storage. Being able to store NFT data, being able to store images, icons. This stuff is really important when you're talking about a game that has to run on the cloud. And a lot of us don't realize this because, again, it's at its infancy. So I've been diving into it because it's important for the future. The future is going to be cloud gaming. And I think the Theta blockchain has a huge piece of that for storage capabilities.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So moving on to the next individual question for Rob here. I think you got into this a little bit in the beginning here, but would love to hear you expand a bit more. So as an artist coming from the traditional art and animation world and comics, what about Web3 excites you, and what do you think have been the biggest challenges you have faced?
Yeah, I kind of, we talked a little bit about this before, but the thing that excites me the most is the fact that, you have ownership of comics, and it really kind of levels the playing field for independent artists and these big labels. And I think a lot of these cases are, digital comic artists, indie comics who get their comics printed, or self-publishers rather. And I'm speaking mainly not so much about indie labels, because from my perspective, I feel that NFTs and, as we do call them, digital collectibles, are really creator to community direct. I feel like a lot of these corporations that glom on, so to speak, to the whole NFT trend, kind of missed the point. The point being that this creator to community connection is everything. You really don't want Marvel necessarily to drop NFTs. I mean, they can, of course. It's just a little too early right now, as they have done. But it's just not, you really want a creator, like a John Romita Jr. or something to drop an NFT to speak to that community. In many ways, like a Patreon or a Kickstarter or something like that, you tend to invest in the individual, not so much the company. So in a lot of ways, it would level the playing field for a lot of these labels, and to actually cause real revenue for the comic creator to fund their comic. I mean, how many Kickstarters are done, um, in a month for comics? Like, it's a lot, right? And so they wouldn't necessarily have to do that. They could simply drop the NFT, establish their community, keep going back to the same people that bought before, airdrops, all these other levels of engagement that NFTs provide and that Web3 provides. So that's got me really excited in that respect. In a lot of ways, this whole animation production with Psycho KO and the cast of Napoleon Dynamite is a really good case for leveling that playing field. I don't know how many times I was turned down by Hollywood for pitches and things like that. So yeah, again, this is like, I can't say necessarily that anything would have happened without the magic of Web3. The other thing is, of course, that the challenges is really goes hand in hand with that, is trying to convince creators to take that step, to take the leap into Web3 and NFTs and say, you may not want to kickstart your project. Maybe you want to drop it as an NFT. Maybe you want to just, speak to your community directly and sell it that way. It eliminates the middleman. You can have all that revenue yourself. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, it's really exciting. But again, it's so hard to speak to this right now because of the state that we're in, and that I can only hold on for the future. I know that sounds so dramatic, right? It's like holding, but it's true. I mean, right now is the time. Like everybody else here, we're building, and we're building for the next stage of when there is global adoption, for when regulation is, a little clearer, that we're ready to take on that challenge and be there to launch our products. So it's really exciting. And it's something that, despite the negativity or, this bear market, this trough of disillusionment, I'm still very much into this, the idea of being able to sell my work through this mechanism.
Awesome. Thank you, Rob. And then next one asked Nick, actually. I was wondering, can you give us a bit of an update on Satoshiverse and what we can expect in the next couple of months from the game?
Sure. Yeah, I'll keep it short because I know we still got some other questions to go through. But we recently released our Alpha Phase 4, which is our first open testnet version. So anyone in here who's interested in playing the game that we've been working on for the last 2 years now, about 30 people working on the game full time. So very excited about what we've been able to build. You can do that by going to our website, satoshiverse.io, clicking on the game, and then it'll take you to our game app and game.satoshiverse.io, and that'll, you can register, download the game, and play it for free. We have some really cool prizes that you can win by participating and finishing essentially the campaign and then recording a speed run, which is our competitive mode, the leaderboard. And we've got prizes that you'll get once we go live on mainnet, which are, just prizes for that super limited edition, you were there before anyone else was type of stuff. So we're excited about that. I know the community's been pretty actively playing, and it's not super easy to get to that point. So you do have to play through the story and the game to get there. But what do we got coming up? That's what I'm really excited about. The next 2 to 3 months are going to be real big. We're really gearing up for our mainnet launch. So all that progress, all those items are going to start counting very soon, because we're going to be, right now we're on testnet, we're going to be on mainnet very soon. As part of that, we're working on a major partnership initiative with between 30 to 50 other projects, where those communities are going to be able to come into the Satoshiverse and play the game and mint an avatar with some cool customization that those who are playing the game currently have been able to see. So we've got that in the works. A lot more information on that is going to be coming out very soon. Today, we're actually going to be announcing our partnership with Hyperplay, who is, a really promising company that's doing, it's a Web3 native game launcher. If you haven't checked them out, you should. They've got some really cool tech that allows you to confirm blockchain transactions on EVM compatible networks in client-based games, which I think is an issue that a lot of different gaming projects are dealing with. And so we're excited about that. One of the big pushes we're making right now is to get all of our DApp functionality, which is, for people who have played our game, know that you have the in-game, the run experience, but then you go out to the web browser for all of the blockchain transactions. We're now putting all of those in game and creating both an in-game blockchain infrastructure and a Web2 infrastructure. So if you don't care about, decentralized ownership, you'll be able to play the game and get items and do all the fun stuff without any of those barriers to entry. So we think this hybrid approach that we're now working on is going to kind of be the prevailing method, at least for the near future. And so we're gearing up for that. But yeah, after that, it's all, growth and expansion. As I said before, we're working with multiple different blockchain partners, and would love to learn more about Theta as well as a potential partner for the future. Our goal is to have as many blockchain partners as we can to have access to the game, and so we are actively planning campaigns with our blockchain partners for the months after our initial launch later this year. So we're working around the clock. Really excited, really great community. I mean, if I didn't wake up and get to go into the Discord and see positivity every day, I think this would be hard, or at least a lot harder than it is, because it's been a gauntlet in this market. But we're still building, very excited, and get to keep doing stuff like this. So just real excited about what's coming, and just happy for all the support we've received along the way.
Awesome, Nick. Thank you for the update. And then I had another individual question here for Kyler at Pog. So coming from the physical collectible space, I was curious what your thoughts were. What are some of the new collecting and gameplay experiences that you think Web3 can bring to physical collectibles and kind of physical games?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, that's really what we're focused on right now, is the ability to find an item in an environment or in gameplay, or winning it through some kind of competition, and then turning around and being able to redeem it for a physical version. So with Theta, we dropped our first collector's box in about 20 plus years. The last one we released was with Marvel, and it comes with 12 packs of Pogs. In one of those 12 packs is a redemption for a new collection NFT that will be on PogChain, the first collection there. And so having this interoperability not only across platforms, but between the digital and physical realm is something that we're really, really excited about. And so over the next 3 weeks, we've already created 5 collections, 3 on Bitcoin, 3 on Solana, 1 on Bitcoin, and 1 on Ethereum. And we took all of that art and we put them into these 10,000 packs that we're releasing and won't be releasing again. But with the 90s Pogs, I'm staring right now at an unpopped sheet of our first series. And yesterday I opened and popped out Disneyland Pogs, Kool-Aid Pogs, and a bunch of others. And so we're basically putting those in display cases, giving them an NFC chip that is behind a tamper-proof seal, serial number, and NFC ID is stored in the metadata of the digital version. So it will link directly to your physical. So if you get one verified from us or authenticated digitally, you will have the physical version, but also be able to play with the digital version inside of the game that we've built. It's Play for Keeps, and has done rather well on the Solana side. But the idea of building these collectibles, whether they're continue to be our physical pogs or packs of pogs or boxes, or we're really excited about some of these other physical releases that we'll be doing in partnerships with some designers from France and so forth, and some artists from France. And so the ability for us to authenticate collectibles, hide them in a digital environment, and people who can compete with either their assets, like in a Pog versus Pog game, or utilize Poggercoin to like compete, and pull these physical items out that are also validated by digital is something that we would have loved to have been able to do in the 90s as a kid. And so now we're going to be bringing that back for all of us adults, and we've got a pretty exciting global rollout for the next 2-3 years of bringing those back into the playground and so forth. And so all of that will be tied digitally. We're just ironing out exactly all the kinks, and it'll take time to scale, but we're really excited about where we are currently.
Awesome. Love that approach, especially the way that you're bridging physical and digital there. It's very, very cool. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to look a little deeper into that. And then last individual question here, one second, is for Ivory at Fuse Wars. So in the beginning, in the first question we were talking about, you mentioned how you think that NFTs and blockchain should be natively built into games. I was curious what your thoughts were on what are some of the specific game design aspects that you think are most important to have on chain?
Oh, great question. First and foremost, interaction. So, like, if we can allow the gamer to interact with the NFT within the game, that would be huge. Obviously, that interaction needs to be fun and exciting. Being able to almost manipulate your NFT based off of your gameplay, I think, is huge. That's what me and my team have been working on, because we believe that if the game is not fun and enjoyable, and you can interact with the blockchain itself, then it's pretty much a waste of calling it a Web3 game. You might as well just call it a game. And so having that Web3 interaction, I think, would be the most important key. Aside from that, that now creates almost a triple down effect, where now that I've interacted with my NFT, I've actually created some value on my NFT. Now I own it. Now it's mine. So now I can really say that this belongs to me, because you get to see my gameplay results on my NFT, and that's almost very personable per gamer. So now every gamer has a personable experience. It's not the same for everyone. Everyone's different, and now ownership becomes more important, in my opinion. The word ownership means more. To own a pair of sneakers that is made by Nike, it's okay. We do it, but to own something that I myself was involved in, my actions were involved in, is way more powerful. And I think that long term is going to be a huge value piece to blockchain technology inside of video games. Other than that, besides of ownership and interaction with NFTs, I think that having the framework built without a selling pitch of NFTs is really important, especially now and in the future. I think games need to be more about fun and experiences, and then allow the NFT and the blockchain aspect to be in the background and not in the forefront. Allow the NFTs and the framework just to be there, and allow the gamer to discover it for themselves, not you're telling them and constantly telling them. Let the game be the fun aspect to it, and allow the metadata, allow the blockchain transactions to be the back end, and we're not pushing that in the front. That would be what I'm looking to accomplish, and I'm hoping many other game developers are looking to accomplish.
Yeah, I totally agree there. I think that, the way we've been looking at it is very similarly. From what you said, I mean, it began with, we had our avatar collections, and you could view them and play them in game, and that was awesome, right? I think in the beginning, people were just really excited to see a cool 3D NFT inside of a video game. But I think that it goes so much deeper than that, right? From for example, something we're doing is, just something as simple as your avatar's level being stored in the NFT metadata. So as you play and gain experience, it dynamically updates, and you now have a level 10 avatar on your NFT, and people can see that, and you can trade that, and you can buy that, right? But then, kind of to what you were saying, when you start thinking about customization and kind of uniqueness, we just finished our avatar creator, at least the alpha version of it. And it's really cool to see people getting in there and their personalities really coming out through the things that they create, which are then, essentially snapshotted and minted as an NFT with all that dynamic functionality of leveling up and all the things you would expect in a game. But just being able to kind of put your touch on something and then say, I own this. This is something that I created, and it's mine to play with now, and hopefully, as the infrastructure gets better, play with in other metaverses in the future, and kind of represent our community within other communities. And that's the other thing that we're really looking to do with this avatar creator, is partnering with projects and saying, hey, bring your community to us. They're going to be able to do something cool that we've invested a lot of time in building, but it's going to have, your logo on it. It's going to have your, that superhero type patch on that avatar is going to be your, community's logo, or a piece of art if it's an artist, or whatever it might be. And so kind of bringing, communities together. I think there's so much potential for that in this space that could probably exist in the Web2 space if we're being honest. That the tech's there, but the kind of collaborative ethos may not be, right, and it quite often isn't. So I that's what gets me going. I'm really excited about that part.
100%, 100%. Also, just to add one other aspect is games and education. I think gamifying education is very important, and NFTs can be your report card. And I think NFTs are going to one day be a part of that aspect where education becomes gamified and games are actually educating people. You might as well have that, because games are going to be so important. They're already important, but you see a $600 billion, I believe, industry by 2030. NFTs being a report card within a structure of a student learning within a video game, I think is also important. And that NFT, is soul bound. It's bound by that particular person, and that person gets to, educate themselves using that NFT. So I think that's also a huge piece in the future.
Awesome. Just in the interest of time here, I wanted to really quickly announce our giveaway winner here. So the winner this week of our Satoshi Saves Lives LA NFT trading card is Juxton, at Juxton. Congratulations, Juxton. Please send us a DM and we will make sure to get you your prize. Pog, Kyle, it looks like you have something to add.
Yeah, so I think we've all said ownership is important, but I don't know if we've done the best job at emphasizing what ownership really is and what the benefits of a Web3 ownership versus a Web2 ownership looks like, especially in gaming. Just a real quick excerpt from what I'm really thinking is most important is that, like, what we just saw with, I think, Call of Duty or whatever game just deprecated their first version after they're on version 6 and they'll no longer support the assets in version 1. We're going to see that more and more and more, because the cost of these assets to be maintained in a game database is very, very, very high. So what that means is, if you own one of these avatars that we're creating inside of Satoshiverse, even if Satoshiverse for any reason decides that they pivot, or maybe for some reason they're not going to service the first avatars, which I guarantee that won't happen, but let's just say a different company out there releases avatars and all of a sudden they're not going to work on them anymore, they're not going to support them, because they're on the blockchain and because you actually own them, they're on a smart contract. Any game developer around the world can build a game around those assets, right? It's no longer, once you release them onto the blockchain and into the space, unless they're going to go and remove all of the physical images and so forth, which is almost like a very kind of malicious thing to do to your community. The blockchain allows you to own that asset and utilize that in any environment, regardless of whether it was built by the issuer.
Awesome, thank you. So we're at the end of the hour here. So Nick, I'm going to throw it back to you to close this out here.
Yeah, no, that was a great conversation. I'm really, I wish we had another hour, because it was really great. I always really enjoy these conversations, and they're one of the few times I get to kind of pop my head up and see what other people are doing. So thank you so much to everyone who joined the panel. We had a great audience in the crowd today, here live. I know we're going to have a lot of people watching this on the recorded version. So shout out to all of you for showing up. It's always nice to talk to a full room. So thank you very much to everyone. I'll close out with just make sure that you check out what everybody's building. Give them a follow. If you haven't heard of Satoshiverse, I don't like to talk about it too much. We probably talked about it more in this one than we have in the past. But we got a ton of stuff going on. So check out what we're building. Please check out all the other games and networks on here, the creators that we've had on. If you like this setup, there's lots of recorded versions that you can go back and watch. So if you just feel like you have time to kill and want to check out past versions, we always have some really interesting discussions on here. So thank you to everyone who joined the panel. If you want to close with anything, please feel free. And then I will close the spaces. But thanks again, and looking forward to seeing everybody soon and continuing to follow what you're all building.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
Same here. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you. Bye, everybody.